In 1884, while epidemics like cholera and malaria were killing thousands, one man began cycling through the streets of Calcutta carrying medicines he made himself. He wasn't trying to build a business, but somehow that small mission turned into one of India's biggest consumer brands. Today, almost every Indian home has at least one of its products. The question is, how did a man on a bicycle build an empire worth over 1 lakh crore? Calcutta in 1884 was a city in crisis. Cholera, malaria, and plague were killing people across neighborhoods, and for most ordinary Indians, proper healthcare simply didn't exist. Colonial medicine was expensive, and the poor had no real access to it. It was in this city that a physician named Dr SK Burman started making Ayurvedic formulations at home and delivering them to patients who couldn't afford treatment. He would cycle through the streets himself, carrying the medicines he had prepared, reaching people that the formal healthcare system had simply left behind. The poor called him Daktar Burman, Daktar being the Bengali word for doctor. Over time, that name, Daktar Burman, became the foundation of something much larger. Take the first two letters of Daktar and the first three of Burman and you get Dabur. But Dr. Burman wasn't thinking about brand names, he was thinking about reach. His bicycle could only take him so far, so he came up with something remarkable for the time, a mail order system. He would send his medicines by post to villages and towns he couldn't physically visit. By 1896, he had set up his first manufacturing unit in Garia, Kolkata, and by 1919, his son C.L. Burman had established India's first research and development unit for Ayurvedic medicines. What Dr. Burman built in those early years wasn't just a company, it was trust. And that trust, earned one household at a time, became the single most valuable thing Dabur would carry into the next century. Over the following decades, the Burman family kept expanding. More manufacturing, more products, more geography. In 1972, the company moved its headquarters from Kolkata to Delhi, which gave it proximity to policy, regulation, and national scale in a way that Kolkata couldn't simply offer anymore. In 1986, Dabur became a public limited company, and in 1994, it launched its IPO. The issue was oversubscribed 21 times. To put that into perspective, India had just opened up its economy and investor appetite was high across the board. But 21 times oversubscribed wasn't just demand, it was the market finally putting a number on more than a century of household trust. Then, in 1996, Dabur made a move that changed what kind of company it was. It launched real fruit juice and entered the food business. This wasn't an Ayurveda play. This was Dabur deliberately stepping into the broader FMCG space, competing not just on wellness, but on everyday consumption. A doctor's small mission had quietly turned into a category-spanning consumer empire. But inside the family, a different kind of problem had started to grow. By the mid-1990s, Dabur was being managed by 8 members of the Burman family across the 4th and the 5th generation. While this episode talks about succession planning and how legacy businesses navigate it, we have a WhatsApp community called the Personal Finance Club that talks about the nitty-gritties of personal finances and helps you solve it. Link is in the description. Go and check it out now. There were multiple branches, multiple opinions, and multiple people with a deep emotional claim over the direction of the business. The company had scale and brand equity, but it wasn't growing at the pace the family wanted. And the honest reason, though nobody wanted to say it out loud, was that the family itself had become a part of the bottleneck. In 1997, the Burmans bought in McKinsey, not to cut costs or restructure a department. They came with a bigger question. How do we grow faster? And how do we stop internal family dynamics from holding the company back? McKinsey's response was blunt. They told the family that these weren't two separate problems. They had the same problem, and then they asked the Burman men something that nobody had ever asked them before. Just because your last name is Burman, does that make you the most qualified person to run this business? That question landed hard. Every man in that room had grown up watching his father and grandfather run Dabur. Being part of the company wasn't a career decision, it was an identity. The fear was completely understandable. If professionals took over, would the family lose control? What if the business went in the wrong direction? What if it failed without a Burman actually running things? But the Burmans made the call. In 1998, Dabur handed management over to professionals, and for the first time in 114 years, a non-family CEO sat at the helm of the company. And then in 2002, the family went even further. They wrote a family constitution, a formal document that set out exactly how the Burmans would interact with Dabur from that point forward. The rules were unlike anything most Indian family businesses had ever put into writing. No family member would hold an executive role. The board would take 12 members with a maximum of 4 Burmans. The chairman and vice chairman positions would rotate across the 4 branches of the family, and critically, neither the chairman nor the vice chairman would draw a salary. Their income would come entirely from dividends. This was a family choosing in writing to limit its own power before anyone forced them to. They didn't lose control because outsiders pushed them out. They reduced their own footprint in the business because they understood that scale required professional management, and professional management required the family to get out of the way. It worked. Dabur crossed 1,000 crore in turnover in 2000 and kept growing. The company built institutional depth that no single family branch could have ever created on its own. The Burmans stopped running the machine every day, but they never stopped owning it. By the early 2020s, the Burmans had evolved into something quite different for the family of the doctor on the bicycle. Dabur was professionally managed and growing, with the family holding a 66% promoter stake, and the capital that had been generated over 140 years of consumer business was now being deployed into new territory. Healthcare, financial services, hospitality, media, and education all came under the Burman family's broader investment interests. While this episode talks about succession planning and how legacy businesses navigate it, we have a WhatsApp community called the Personal Finance Club that talks about the nitty-gritties of personal finances and helps you solve it. Link is in the description. Go and check it out now. And here's the interesting part. Dabur didn't stay an Ayurveda company forever. It started with Chyawanprash and hair oil, one kind of product, one kind of customer. But a company that sells only one thing has a weakness. If that one thing stops selling, the whole business shakes. So this legacy brand, more than a century old, made a deliberate choice. It spread out. It moved into juice with Reel, into oral care with toothpaste, into foods, skincare, home care, even mosquito repellents. Different products, different categories, different risks. So when one part had a bad year, another part carried the company. That's how a 140-year-old brand stayed steady while thousands of single product companies came and went. And here's why that matters to you. Your money works exactly the same way. Most people put everything into one place. Maybe it's just mutual funds, maybe it's just an FD, maybe it's just one stock a friend recommended. But if all your money sits in one basket, you carry the same risk Dabur was smart enough to avoid. If that one thing falls, everything falls with it. Diversification isn't a fancy investing trick. It's the same survival instinct Dabur used, just applied to your savings. Spread your money across mutual funds, equity, fixed income, gold, maybe some safer debt, so that a bad year in one doesn't wipe out everything you've built. Dabur protected a century of trust by never betting on a single product. You can protect your future the same way by never betting everything on a single investment. Then, in 2023, they turned their attention to Religare Enterprises, a financial services company operating across lending, broking, and insurance-linked businesses. The Burmans built up their stake steadily. Reuters reported that by September 2023, they had raised it to nearly 25%, which triggered an open offer to acquire an additional 26%. What followed was one of the most public and contentious boardroom battles in Indian financial services. Religare's own board questioned whether the Burmans were fit and proper to take control of the company. SEBI got involved, directing Religare to seek regulatory approvals. RBI eventually gave its nod. A competing offer came from US businessman Digvijay Danny Gaikwad at a higher price, but the Burmans held their ground. By March 2026, the family had raised their Religare stake to approximately 30% through open market purchases. This was no longer just a consumer goods story. The wealth built on Chyawanprash, Hajmola, and hair oil had become a vehicle for building influence in Indian financial services. Dabur's FY25 annual report showed consolidated revenue from operations of 12,563 crores, operating profit of 2,317 crores, and profit after tax of 1,768 crore. Promoter holdings stood at 66.25% as of March 2026. The family gave up management control, but they never gave up ownership control. And in doing that, voluntarily, before anyone forced them to, they did something that most Indian businesses never manage. A doctor in Kolkata started with the bicycle and a belief that medicine should be accessible to everyone. His son turned that into manufacturing. The next generation took it public. And then the great-grandchildren made the hardest call. They stepped back from running the company their great-great-grandfather had built because they were honest enough to recognize that love for something is not the same as being the best person to run it. The professionals scaled Dabur, the family kept ownership, and the capital from that empire eventually moved into boardrooms far beyond Chyawanprash. But the real product was never any of those things. It was never Hajmola or hair oil or honey. The real product was trust, built over 140 years, one household at a time. And trust, once you start selling it instead of earning it, becomes a very different kind of asset. It started with one man in Kanpur. A small pan masala brand became a national habit. On wedding trays, shop counters and cinema halls across the country. One line made it unforgettable.
बारातियों का स्वागत पान पराग से कीजिए.
Then came the pouches, the scale, and eventually the family split. One son carried pan parag forward, another built Rotoman. One family, two legacies, one brand India never actually forgot. Like, comment and subscribe to Personal Finance TV for the next episode of Roots. Until next time, this is me, Rohan Richard, signing off.